interest in the class and how much you value what you've been learning, right? So I'll just want to get just one person that will share an experience with us. How has the class been so far from the beginning up to now? What have you learned and how have you been able to implement what you've learned so far? Just one person, raise your hand and I'm going to call you. All right, so nobody wants to share anything with us. Okay, Joseph, please, in 1 minute, just go straight to the point. Thank you. You can unmute yourself now.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Joseph. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fine. I really want to thank Electoral College Nigeria. The classes have been very insightful, knowledge-based, and then I've been watching the political scene, especially during this election nearing periods. I think what they have been teaching us in this class has been very, very important, because when I see actions and inactions of political actors and then the electorate and how events are turning out in the polity these days, I begin to correlate what we've been taught in class and what is going on right now from our budget, what do we call it now? We're talking, some topics came up during the classes where we talked about how the local government and states goes to Abuja and sharing of what is being gathered to the center, to the local governments and the state. And then just yesterday, we heard about the deficit in budget. And I was just wondering, I said, this is exactly what we're talking in class. And then from there to issues of climate change, where we are having heat waves in the European nations, like it has never happened before. And most experts confirm that this is the effect of climate change. And I cannot forget that class. That class has been very impactful for me, being that I'm an urban planner. And I really thank the Electoral College Nigeria for opening those insightful knowledge for me. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you. I'm so proud of all that you've learned. And of course, we continue to thank the Electoral College for the great works that we've been doing in educating the Nigerian populace about politeracy and governance. Our facilitator is in the house already, so I'm going to read out her profile and then I'm going to introduce her. And our topic today is the challenges of young people in politics. Our facilitator today is Rinsola Abiola. Rinsola Abiola is a young politician, communication specialist, and government relations professional. She's an advocate for gender equity and youth inclusion in governance, who works at the intersection of policies and civil society to promote enhanced representation for marginalized groups in decision-making structures. Ms. Abiola was Special Assistant on Media to the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogar. She also served on the Board of Trustees of the Governing All Progressive Congress from 2014 to 2018. In 2022, she contested for the position of National Youth Leader at the APC's National Convention, the first woman since the formation of the party to do so. Rinsola is a UN Women Intergenerational Mentee, one of 25 young Nigerian women choosing to carry on advocacy regarding meeting goals outlined in the Beijing Platform for Action. She also once served on the advisory board of the World Youth Movement for Democracy. She runs the Rinsola Abiola Foundation, a non-profit domiciled in Abeokuta, her hometown, and established with the aim of carrying out social development. So our facilitator today is Rinsola Abiola. You're welcome, ma'am.
Hi guys, hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, you're welcome.
So are we ready? Do I start?
Yes, you can start already.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm coming. Let me just share my screen. Okay, hi everyone. So the topic for today is challenges of young people in politics. So I've summarized it into a rather short presentation because I'm anticipating that there'll be questions at the end of the session. So I'll start now. So this has pretty much been put together based on my experience and the experience of other people other young people in politics that I've spoken to. So I'm trying to ensure that you guys get a balanced view. So please just hold on as I begin. Okay. So you can still see my screen, right?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Okay, great, thank you. So first things first, what is politics? I know this is something that you've definitely gone over in other classes and something you obviously have an idea about before even signing up for this. So politics is something you could define, as being about who gets what, when, and how. Politics, actions or activities concerned with achieving and using power in a country or society. It's an organized process of peacefully settling contestations on how resources are harnessed and deployed, as well as how society itself is structured, run, and maintained. And I really like to highlight the word peacefully here because, there's a saying that politics is war through other means. And if we're going through political means, then it means that as much as possible, we're able to avoid conflict. And that's very key to me in the definition of politics. So politics and representation. The definition I gave earlier underscores the importance of representation and inclusion. To preserve the legitimacy of the process among all the majority of members of any given society, and to meet the goal of satisfactorily addressing social concerns in a peaceful and organized way, then constituent groups must be adequately represented and afforded equal opportunities to aspire for power and advocate for issues important to them. And that's why representation is key. I say often that in a government by the people, for the people, of the people, then it's only expected that the people are adequately represented, the different segments of the people, talking about young people, talking about women, talking about people with disabilities, talking about people, with different ethnicities. Nigeria, for instance, we have the federal character law, and we also try to replicate that in our politics. Look at the composition of the House of Representatives and the Senate, for instance, and state assemblies in our respective states. They ensure that representation is chosen from all the major groups, all the areas that need to be represented. Now that's fine, but then it's not as granular as it ought to be, because we find that young people and women and people with disabilities are still grossly underrepresented in all of these spaces. So who is the youth? I know that before going into this, we already understand that when it comes to politics in Nigeria, youth is not always what youth means everywhere else in the world. According to the Commonwealth, youth are persons aged between 15 and 29. In Nigeria, it should be within 18 and 35, although it seems we have a new youth policy now that puts it at 30 or thereabouts. But then within political circles, it often refers to relatively young politicians. And when I say relative compared with the older, more established politicians. So saying you have an established politician who is 70 years old, they could very well consider someone closer to 50 as a youth, in the same bracket as they would consider someone around 35. So, you know, within political circles, some people considered youths actually closer to 50 than 35. Another reason why that persists is the fact that we're not doing so well when it comes to succession. It's a bit hard getting people to move from the youth circle to mainstream political authority. Then looking at our population is very youthful. Young people account for close to 70% of our estimated 200 million population. Our median age as a country is 18, and that's the age upon which citizens qualify to exercise their franchise. In 2019, young people also had about 47% of the voter register or thereabouts. And with the ongoing voter registration process, it's still young people who have the bulk of the numbers. So, you know, our population is very youthful, and young people actually own a very large stake in our population. So looking at youth in politics, despite the fact that young people account for an overwhelming majority of Nigeria's population, we're not really well represented in the country's politics. And it's a situation that leaves us with less than desired sway over the country's leadership direction and a cause of frustration for many young people. So in recent times, in 2018, we got the Not Too Young to Run bill enacted, passed into law, and that opened the door for people from 25 upwards to run for positions in the legislature, both at state level and federal. So the Not Too Young to Run law really helped to get more young people involved. And then even aside from opening the door for people from 25 and above, it also encouraged those who were older than that age, but still within the youth population, to also vie for elective office. Then, you know, prior to that, we were forced to watch from the sidelines as decisions were made on our behalf with no legal pathway to aspire to and claim power. Prior to Not Too Young to Run, the age of eligibility for state assembly and House of Reps was 30, so it was reduced by 5 years, even though we still have a bit of a challenge with actually translating that law into adequate representation. But at least we have more young people signifying interest, and we have more young people, you know, standing up to vie for elective office. In appointed positions, we also have a number of young people, some leaders, governors especially, some are more youth-friendly than others. In a state like Lagos, you'll find many young people holding different positions within the cabinet. In a state like Ogun, you'll also find a lot of young people there. In a state like Kaduna, it's flush with young people. Other states, I know of, I think Calabar, some states in the north, some other states in the north, I think Kano also has some young people there. So you'll find young people in certain positions. And then at the federal level, the vice president, for instance, is very famous for working with young people. And then we have a number of young people also in other other appointed positions, like the Rural Electrification Agency. It's run by young people, and a couple other agencies like that. But you know, the level of representation is still not ideal, especially if we look at our population strength. So the challenges militating against adequate youth representation and dominance in politics range from economic to cultural. There's the issue of finance. We know that politics is very expensive, especially if you're actively participating. Say you want to run for office, it is very expensive. I've run for office once, and I tell people it's the most expensive venture I've ever embarked on. It's very expensive. And even if you're not running for office, say, for instance, you live in one place and you work there, but you're doing your politics in your state of origin or something, the back and forth participating in party processes, supporting the party, being there for your people, running programs at home. All of these things take a financial toll that a lot of young people are not able to accommodate. And it still, ties into the second point, which is a cost-intensive political process. Take the cost of forms, for instance. This last time, however, the APC gave a 50% reduction in the cost of nomination forms to young people below 35, I believe. And I believe PDP also had a discount. And I know it's the same way across other political parties. Do young people get a discount on the cost of forms? But still, it is expensive. Say, for instance, a young person wants to run for House of Reps, and the total of everything is 10 million. So because there's a discount of 50%, they have to pay 5 million. That 5 million is still out of the reach of a lot of people. And then when you even take the cost of forms and put that aside, you also look at issues like mobilization, engagements, consultations. If you're consulting anybody, if you're mobilizing anybody, it costs money. Yeah, or if you want to do anything in politics, it costs money. You call for a meeting, you handle logistics, you call for a meeting, you go to see people, you give money. So it is a very cost-intensive process that not a lot of young people, again, can accommodate. Then there's the issue of internal democracy. With the new Electoral Act, there are safeguards included in that legislation to protect against people's mandates being stolen. For instance, before your name is substituted, say you've won primaries, you have to give your consent for that to happen. And then if the party insists, you have every right to go to court. From the legislative angle, from the legal angle of things, our laws are beginning to catch up with that particular challenge. But still, even then, the challenge persists. So within political parties, and another, as an aside, people are often quick to say that it's the bigger parties that have issues with internal democracy, but I assure you, even in the smaller ones, in the less mainstream, the not so mainstream, and the less established political parties, you'll find terrible issues playing out. It's like Game of Thrones when it comes to their tickets. And it's very funny anyway, but it's pretty much the same issue happening in those places too. And then ageism and other cultural bias. I know a lot of people involved in politics who are very cagey about revealing their age. Once you ask them how old are you, they're very reluctant to answer. And not just in Nigeria, even other places across, especially in Africa. And the main reason is that when it seems like you're respectable, you speak well, you articulate, you know what you're doing, people respect you. When they know how young you are, it might actually affect their perception of you. So a lot of young people who seem to be doing well in politics are very, a bit cagey when it comes to, oh, how old are you? They're very reluctant to answer because they're worried about how the perception might change. People realize, oh, so this person is not even that old, because we're an ageist society and respect is very often tied to age. The cultural bias, especially if you're a woman, again, for us who are female, it's like double jeopardy. One, you're young, two, you're female. People just look at you like there's everything in the world wrong with you. So, and other things should be your priority. So there's a cultural bias. Again, if you're a young person, it seems like, but this your elder has been waiting for so long. So why are you saying that, why are you trying to vie for something that even elders are yet to get? And that's a big challenge with our politics because it prevents young people with capacity from coming forward or from emerging, even if they do. And then widespread disaffection and non-participation in politics. You'll find that there's a high level of apathy to politics and everything related to it among young people. And again, for those of us who are in mainstream political parties, I'm a member of the APC, I'm very active within my party. There's also a level of animosity that we have to deal with from other young people who belong to other parties or who don't belong to parties at all. So there is the fact that within your party, you need more young people with capacity to step up because you're trying to correct the underrepresentation of young people in politics. And then from outside, other young people look at you like you've sold out because you're in a party that they don't like, especially if you're in PDP or APC, it's terrible. And then for those who are not even in smaller parties, at least they're still active, but you find that the large majority of young people don't even want to hear about politics at all. And then they vilify the few young people who are bold enough to join or who indicate interest and want to be part of the process. So this can be very discouraging, especially for young people who believe in community, who believe in support, who don't want to be on the wrong side of their peers. So if you're joining politics, you need to understand that no matter what party you are, if they drag one party today, the day will come when they will drag your own too. And you just have to have thick skin, explain where you can, resolve issues where you can, and if you can't, know how to deal with it and be able to, just roll with things and handle the criticism that might come your way by virtue of being politically active. Finance cost, internal democracy, ageism, perfection. I think that's fine. Then addressing the challenges, access to funding is key, and economic empowerment. I believe particularly in putting your money where your mouth is. And that's why I believe that young people who have come forward and who we know have the capacity to deliver deserve all the support that they can get. And if you look at it, in advanced democracies, nobody is expected to fund their political campaign out of pocket. It's a really crazy thing to expect one person to be solely responsible for funding their campaign. And crowdfunding is a part of the political culture in those places. And I feel like these are things that we also need to replicate as young people here, set up the structures that will help those amongst us who are politically active to have the kind of support that they need to excel at politics. Because I will not lie to you, it is very expensive. If you're running for office, it is bloody expensive. And then if you're not running, maybe you're just trying to build influence within your party system, it still costs you a great deal of money. Yoruba people, I don't know how many of us are here, but I'll translate when I'm done. They will say that what that means is that if you want to reap benefits from something, you have to have put in the work over time. And when it comes to politics, putting in the work requires a lot of spending. So even before you get to the point where you feel like you're ready to run for office, you might win, you might not. You might get the ticket, you might not. But before you even get to that point, there's a level of investment that you must have made within the political party system for them to actually think that you're, would I say worthy or you're qualified to actually step up for that position. So building influence within the party system is also pretty cost intensive, especially if you're playing at the local level. Then campaign finance regulations, these are key so that those of us who are young, who are women, who are at a disadvantage, who are not money bags, are able to have an equal playing field when it comes to politics. We all know there are restrictions on just how much can be spent on a political campaign, but these are loosely applied. People flout those restrictions all the time, but I don't think anybody has ever been brought to book for not financing their campaigns in accordance with the laid down rules and regulations and, in contravention of the law. So that's also very key. Promotion of internal party democracy. As I said earlier, the Electoral Act, there are provisions within it that have made it mandatory for things to be done by the system. Loopholes exist. And we just have to continue advocating for the kind of changes that we really need within that system. Then facilitating political interest and participation amongst young people is very key, that we're able to talk to our peers so that they understand that being politically active is not you selling out your generation, and that politics remains the best bet for creating change on a very large scale and the kind of numbers that would matter. Say, I run 2 nonprofits. There's one that I run for gender. There's one that I run to make impact in my local community where I'm from. And no matter how many people were able to reach via either nonprofit, it's not going to be the same as being in a position where maybe I could make laws, or I could, bring a project to the locality or to the community or to the country. We can do what we can in our individual capacities as people, as citizens, but there is so much more that you can do with the backing of the Constitution. If you have constitutional power, if you have government power, if you're able to influence policies and actions of government, and that's very key. Then cultural reforms and elimination of bias against young people. That also ties into something I mentioned earlier, the bias within young people against other young people who are partisan. And then cultural reforms, there's a lot of reorientation that needs to be done. And the fact that someone is young doesn't mean that they're not qualified. The fact that someone is young doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. The fact that someone is young doesn't mean that they're not responsible. The fact that someone is young doesn't mean that they can't vie for elective office, or that they can't occupy sensitive positions, or that they can't play a key role in governing their communities. And also, as young people, we should also be mindful of the cultural nuances where we're from. For instance, if you know your people tend to perceive people who dress a certain way, in a certain manner, then I think you should also try so that when you're engaging them, say you're going to a remote village, try and look like somebody they would want to listen to. Because in as much as we want to change things, in as much as we wish things would be different, in as much as we're not happy about it when people act a certain way to things that we don't consider a big deal, it's also important that we take people as they are and not necessarily as we hope that they will be. So, when we make that connection and then they begin to really warm up to us, then we can try at to make an effort at reorientation. But until then, it's very key that we try to also abide by the regulations where we're from and to take the nuances in our respective communities into consideration. So that's where I have stopped for this presentation, and I look forward to receiving questions and addressing the same.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma. It was a very wonderful and powerful presentation. Like all the issues you mentioned here are issues that affect us directly. And I know there are a lot of questions that is going to be coming from the audience. So like we used to do, if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'm going to call you in that order. Then if you are in a very noisy place, you can write your question on the chat box and I'm going to pick it up from there. So guys, I would like you to ask questions, right? Anything you don't understand, this is an opportunity. Our facilitator, it's very, she's widely experienced and I think she has answers to every question you might want to ask today, okay? So ask question, ask. I just want, if possible, I would love everybody to ask questions because we have enough time. So nobody wants to ask a question? Okay, ma, maybe I'll start with my own question because I have a couple of questions. Okay. So let me go to Latasha first. I think I should ask my question last. Latasha, you can unmute your mic and ask a question now. Hello, Latasha. Okay, let me check the chat box. Okay, Joseph, you can go ahead. You seem not available at the moment. Joseph, ask a question.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, the class has been insightful. I have one question, and that has to do with funding of political parties and how young people will be able to get into the main political stream to be able to afford maybe buying of forms to run for political office. In a situation where you have, for example, the main political party, the ruling political party, where you have forms for House of Reps or the governorship is running to up to 50 million, and you discount 50% of that. And then you have young people who wants to run for those offices in the main political stream, in the mainstream political party. How do you think this kind of issue can be solved, especially for young people who are in those political parties? I know in other political parties, the ones that we say they are smaller, although now I don't think any political party is small anymore, but those ones are a little bit cheaper. In the main political parties, the ruling political party, how do you think this can be solved?
Okay, your question has been noted. Do I answer this before we go ahead to the other ones?
Yes, you answer. And after that, I'll call the next person.
Okay, so on funding of political parties are supposed to be funded through dues. When I ran for national youth leader, and then the other time I ran for House of Reps, usually you have to show proof of payment of all these dues to show that you've truly been a responsible member of the party. So they're supposed to be run through dues, but you find that in a lot of political parties, members don't actually pay their dues as frequently as they're supposed to. Then for young people playing in the mainstream, looking at the cost of forms. Now, there are a number of issues that determine how much forms will cost, for instance. Say, during the last convention, when I ran for National Youth Leader of the APC, the form for the position I was going for was 5 million. And as a woman, I got a concession of 50%, so I paid 2.5 for that particular form. And for other offices, I think for party chairman, it was 20 million or thereabouts. And women got a discount, but not young people. The thing with the major parties is that you'll find that forms in major parties are more expensive than in the other political parties. And this is because, okay, so we look at the issue of economics one. Say you're running on the platform of APC in a state like Ogun, where I'm from, where APC is the governing party, and then you're running on the platform of, I'm making up a party now, say PMP, that it's a new party, newly registered, they barely have a structure. For all intents and purposes, it's going to be much easier for you to emerge on the platform of the PMP than it will be for you on the platform of the APC, because they have different things to offer. If you're able to get a ticket and say APC, you know that your chances of winning the election are much higher, right? But that also affects the cost of participation in these parties. And then again, one thing that party officials try to do is ensure that people don't just come forward for the sake of it. Because politics attracts all kinds of people. And I'm trying to be very polite now. You'll find that a lot of people aim for offices, not because they have anything to do there, or because they actually want to do anything, but just because perhaps they think it would bring fame or some kind of social recognition or something. So there are people who just want to run for the fun of it. And when the barrier for entry is a little too low, you encourage all sorts of people to just step forward. So that's also another reason why the cost of forms is pegged where it usually is. And now looking at young people being able to participate and what we can do regarding that. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to say that I don't expect the cost of forms and the major political parties to be reduced. PDP charged 40 million for the presidential forms this election cycle. For APC, it was 100 million. And still look at the number of people who came forward. Now, I said earlier that no one is really expected to fund their political campaigns out of pocket in advanced countries, in advanced democracies. And it's very important that also as young people, we try to build in such a way that if and when we're ready to run for office, we will not be bearing the entire cost of running alone. Someone asked me when presidential aspirants were stepping forward in PDP and APC, oh, PDP is charging 40 million, APC is charging 100 million. Don't you think this discourages serious people from coming forward? And my answer was, how is it that you want to run for president of a country and 100 million is difficult for you to raise? And I asked that because if you want to lead a country, right, it's expected that you have gained considerable experience, whether in the public service or the private sector. And by so doing, you've built a network. And if you're vying for that kind of office, you should have people who will support you, people who believe so much in what you stand for and what you have to offer the country, that you don't necessarily have to be the one to bear the full cost of your form by yourself. And I think the same applies to us vying for anything. And then some things are a little pricey, but not entirely out of reach. Say this state assembly forms, the actual price was 2 million, but women only paid 500 because of the concessions that women got at the APC. So 500,000 is still a lot of money in a country like ours, but it's still, more attainable for the average person who wants to contest than 2 million would be for a woman who's really, really struggling. So one thing our parties have been able to do is, also grants concessions to disadvantaged groups like women, like youth, like people with disabilities, so that at least we have something that can enable us participate. So I think it's the onus really lies on us to also build a network and then put in the work such that if we step forward and say, I want to contest for this, people take us seriously enough to actually back us with funding. Because as I said earlier, in advanced democracies, nobody really expects you to tackle the full cost of campaigning out of your own purse.
Wow, thank you so much. Joseph, I hope your question was answered.
Yes, it was to some certain level. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Okay, Latasha, you can go ahead and ask a question. So Dr. Spies, you can unmute her so that she asks a question.
Yes, I've been unmuted. Can you hear me?
Then after, yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Miss Abiola, for the great presentation. My question speaks to competency of young people in politics. So while I understand that financially there may be challenges and whatnot, even in spite of the concessions, which is fair, like you said, age brings a considerable amount of wealth of experience, either at in the private sector or in public space, but competency in politeracy in itself. So obviously, a lot of us in this 8th cohort have learned so much in the last couple of weeks, so much that we didn't even understand was part of governance in itself. I don't feel like a lot of young politicians are well-versed, and it could just be me, but I look at a lot of the people that throw their hats into the ring, and I think even before joining this class, I don't know that they are equipped enough. And I understand that people learn on the job, but why is it that young politicians don't make enough effort to arm themselves with knowledge and just educate themselves? They just feel like ginger is enough to make a change. The ginger of youth is amazing, but you can't take away the experience and wisdom of older people.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why it comes as a surprise when people often revert to the older people who have destroyed what we have, you know what I mean, who have sort of messed up the space, right? So why is it that young politicians are then often surprised, or young people are surprised when the young politicians don't have a grasp of the issues? I can use many examples in the current space. We've seen, without naming any names, just some people throwing their hats into the ring for this 2023 cycle in the positions of, let's say, deputy governor. And even just watching their interviews, I'm cringing. I am seriously cringing, because what are you talking about? So how can young politicians better arm themselves? I mean, we know one way: attend the electoral college, shout out, but what else can they do, or should they be doing? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the very kind comments, and thank you very much for this observation that you just said. It's actually very important. And another thing that some of us within the political system face is that when our peers criticize the systems or they make their complaints, the moment we try to step in and say, oh, so this isn't how that works, or the person you're holding responsible is not who is actually responsible for what you're complaining about, the backlash is serious. It's like they don't want to hear. So I would want to commend organizations like Electoral College with this program. It's a great one. It's actually a really, really great one, with at least ensuring that more young people who have indicated interest in politics are able to learn properly about it. But then I also think that as young people too, having identified this particular challenge, we try to also draw attention to programs of this sort that can close that knowledge gap. And then we can also look at how we can collaborate within our own spaces also to perhaps educate people on one or two concepts. I'm very active on social media, and I've been toying actually with the idea of maybe doing explainer videos once in a while on simple concepts related to governance. But we actually do need to figure out how to take this thing to where it's very needed. And then the issue of people jumping into the scene without adequate preparation is also very serious. And it hurts more so when they're young and when they're female, because we have a very serious challenge with women being underrepresented. So when a woman comes forward, one, the attitude is different. People are expected, people are accustomed to seeing a particular type of politician. So when it's a woman or a young person, or God help you if you're both female and young. So if you're a young woman or you're a young man or you're just, it is a lot more difficult. They will grill you a bit harder than they would the older male politicians because, well, we're not used to seeing people that look like you. So it's very important that if you know you belong to an underrepresented group, do your best for God's sake, so that when you're engaging, you need to understand that they're going to be appraising all other young people, all other young women, all other women by how well you do or how well you don't do. So it's like when a young woman goes on TV and just says a ton of questionable things, when people are going to comment, it's going to be and women say they want to be involved in politics. It's not going to be about that person anymore. It's going to be about women in politics generally. So we also have to do as much as we can to seek knowledge to ensure that we're properly informed about what exactly it is that we're trying to do. And it's very key also that if you know, for instance, you want to run in 2027, you want to run for House of Reps or State Assembly, start from now so that when that time comes, you're properly adept at discussing all the issues related to the office that you want to run for. And I think that's a message that we also need to share with our peers, because I know a lot of people have political ambitions. They're just not sure about when they want to actualize it. So if that's something that you want to do, or somebody who has that in their plans, try to encourage them from now to be able to seek knowledge so that they don't sound ridiculous when the time comes. And then we can only hope that organizations like Electoral College get the needed support to take programs of this sort, to ensure that a lot more people are able to sign up and to have programs on an even larger scale that will reach multitudes at once.
Thank you so much. My second question actually is something that we've talked about in this cohort. I don't remember which facilitator it was, but it was the line between godfatherism and mentorship. And I feel like that is also a very, very blurry space for a young politician. So how do you identify when you are entering the clutches of a godfather as opposed to a mentor-mentee relationship? Because young people definitely need the patronage, the blessings, do you understand, the advice of older, more established people within a political structure, system, or party. But then how are they able to navigate, or how does one navigate so that you don't fall into the wrong, hands?
That's a good question. So godfatherism is mentorship on steroids. That's how I describe it. And in every career path, right, you need somebody who has more access than you do, who's able to advocate for you in rooms that you cannot get into. It's how people move along in their careers world over, and politics is no different. So there's putting in the work, there's being very prayerful, there's being very hardworking, being very committed, and then there's having the right people in your corner. And that's why even with every other field, the importance of networking is stressed, the importance of mentorship is stressed. Someone who's been pretty much everything you want to be, who has amassed a great deal of influence over time, and who can also help you grow in your own career, right? So I think it's very important that we're pragmatic when it comes to discussing politics as a whole. Because this thing we talk about, godfatherism, if you actually didn't know better, you would think, no, the moment you enter, they bomb you, and it's one secret society that you're joining, and it's one dark occultic thing, and you sold your soul to the devil and you're done for life. But it's really just a relationship. It's a mentor-mentee relationship like any other. Now, the reason why our system might be the way it is because, look, within political parties, we made a comment earlier about the funding of political structures and how it's supposed to be membership funds and membership dues that will, prop up the party system. But that's really not the case in the vast majority of instances. You'll find that political parties, for instance, take Kwankwaso, he's a very prominent politician from Kano. He's been in APC, he moved to PDP, now he's in NNPP. The reason a Kwankwaso can move within political parties and have thousands, if not millions of people come along with him is because he has built a structure over time. And you build that structure, you have your own people. If you're joining NNPP, for instance, you should know that you're joining Kwankwaso structure, right? So it is who he decides will get what's within that structure that will get it because he owns it. So essentially, if you don't have a structure of your own and you're relying on another person's structure and you want to rise within that structure, I think it goes without saying that they dictate what happens within a structure that is theirs, that they have built over time, that they have funded over time, that answers to them, that does what they want. And the very best godfathers are people who consult. They don't, contrary to general opinion, they don't just stay in one place and issue commands. They usually have lieutenants, people around them. Say, for instance, I'm from Ogun, for instance, say I happen to be the godfather of my state, also rely on to get the work done in different parts of the state. So say in a territorial district, there'll be other leaders, but you can't have access as easily to the main guy, right? So you have to go to the lieutenant sometimes. So if I want a particular guy, or we're trying to decide who's going to occupy what seats from Ijebu Central, I also have to consult the people in that area. So I know who is most likely to win if they emerge as our candidates. Do you understand? So it's like a whole system that, contrary to what a lot of people think, it's not just one person unilaterally calling the shots. And even within that system, like our last primaries were pretty open to everybody. There were areas where there were upsets and it was not people that were expected to emerge that ended up emerging. So like I feel like there is a lot of there are narratives that have been set about our politics that, one, discourage people, and two, instill a lot more fear than is necessary. And I would just advise everyone, right, approach things with an open mind, build the relationships that you need. You're in the best position to determine whether a handshake has gone beyond the elbow. You're in the best position to determine whether a relationship is more detrimental to you than beneficial. You're in the best position to determine whether the ideals of the person that you're aligned with match yours or not, or if you need to find another political family, or if you're better off staying on your own. So this is a decision that will be made based on the situation that you're in. It's really not a decision that can be made for anybody. So say you get to know the most powerful, influential woman where you're from, you want to run for office someday, and then the time comes and she's making demands of you that you're not comfortable with. You have every right and every reason to step back and say, look, I want this, but I don't want it that bad. And that doesn't happen in all the cases. So, and a lot of time, these people are also people that have been in power like a long time ago. They actually just really want, they like having people around. They like the fact that you defer to them. They like the fact that you consult them. You make them feel like they're still very relevant. That's what a lot of these leaders actually just like. So as I said, it depends on the particular situation. And if any weird demands are being made, then you will be in the best position to evaluate whether you think it's worth sticking with or not. And then you can make the decisions that you think, are best for you and for your people and for other interests that you're there to protect.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. The people are asking that they want to see your face, our facilitator, like they are so amazed by this wonderful person and they are not seeing.
I'm not camera ready. I'm actually not feeling too well, so I've just been rolling around the house all day. So I'm not camera ready at all. Yeah.
All right, no problem. So you can hear, okay, so bear with her, all right? I have a couple of questions on the chat box, just very few questions. Someone asks, Edeme. Yeah, I say, my name is Abamio Felix Edeme. My question is, how can this myriad of challenges be turned into prospects for the young and would-be public officials, not only in the political sphere, but in peer pressure groups?
Okay, so this is a good question. And I like that he mentioned pressure groups. So one thing that really helped in my journey and in the journey of quite a number of young people within the APC is that early on, we formed a youth pressure group within the party that became very prominent. So it was as if we were the young people to be reckoned with. And for all intents and purposes, we still are. So another thing you can do is seek power in numbers by organizing within your party, within your locality. When you're many, it's easier for you to push for things. Although I must warn you, as you go along, there will be issues. That happens in groups anyway, and nothing really lasts forever. So in as much as you have to seek security in numbers sometimes, just keep it at the back of your mind that there will be issues as you go along, and how you manage them will determine a great number of things. Then, so how can we turn our challenges into prospects? So for instance, now that you know that funding is a major challenge in Nigerian politics, say you have plans to run in 2035 for governor of your state, begin to work towards it. Build the kind of, begin to work towards building the kind of profile that in 12, 13 years time, when you say you want to run for office, there are people who are so impressed by you that they were willing to fund you and support you. If you know that cultural bias is a challenge where you're from, begin to conduct yourself in a manner that people will not put attention on your age. They will put attention on the kind of things that you're doing. And even if they're going to talk about your age, it's going to be in a complimentary way that, oh, Felix is so young, but look at how much he has done for this community. You understand? So if you know that internal party democracy is an issue, we don't know what the laws will be when that time comes, right? So like, just begin to be on the lookout for things that you know might be a challenge for you, or which of the challenges listed you're able to identify with, and then begin to see how you can plan towards the time when, even by the time you emerge, these are things that you would have factored into your plan and into your strategy. Then another thing I would advise is for young people particularly to keep an open mind. And I say this from experience. So I've actually done quite a number of things. I'm pretty young. I haven't been in politics all that long. Since 2013, just about 9 years, going on 10. But I've been part of quite a number of things, and I've made mistakes, I've done great things, and I think it's the reason why I'm able to really speak with young people and connect with them. So another thing is keep an open mind, right? You might want a particular thing, and you might really work for that thing, and then you might not get it. How you handle it is very key, okay? So always keep an open mind. There are alternatives that can always fall in, even if what you really want doesn't work out. So that's another thing that I think we really need to keep at the back of our minds. So on turning challenges into prospects, just basically, you know your locality best. If what you want to do is run for office, you can already envisage what your challenges will be. Begin to hatch a plan now on how to work around them. If you're looking for elective positions, you want to influence things by being, appointed positions, you want to influence things by being an appointee of government, then begin to make the needed connections, build your network within your party in such a way that when your candidate emerges, you will be, one of, before they mention 5 young people who really worked for them, then you're on the list, and then it's easier for you to lobby and do so successfully. And if you're not in any political party just yet, build a network that encompasses people from different areas, show your skills. You can volunteer for one of the key presidential candidates now who you believe has a good chance of winning, because it's also very important to be pragmatic and to be honest with yourself. And then, if that person wins, you can, based on the relationship you have with either them or someone close to them, they can get you into one of these rooms after the election. So you start from there, really. Just know what it is that you want to do, identify the people that can make it a reality, and then begin to work on building that network and also offering value.
Wow, thank you so much. Okay, there's another question here, and it will be kind of funny, but it says, thanks for the insightful class. As a young politician in APC, how do you feel that an old man of over 70 years is the presidential candidate, and how are the politicians within your age bracket plans to change this narrative in future elections?
I made a point earlier, yeah. If you're going to run for president of the country, for instance, it's expected that you would have garnered a great deal of experience and built a really large network over time before you can now decide you want to occupy the highest office in the land. And usually people who have that experience are not 30-something-year-olds like me. or 20-something-year-olds like a couple mentees I have, or even in their 40s, even though that's not impossible. But again, we talked about our cultural nuances, cultural biases. There is no major political, there is no major presidential candidate right now that is below 60. None of them, no major one that is below 60. So we have a man of 70 years. This is a neutral platform, right? If I answer this as in-depth as I would like to, it's going to seem like I'm campaigning for my candidate, but I assure you, I don't feel sad about it. I feel like he has earned his stripes. He has contributed a lot, right from when we've been fighting for our democracy. You know, the actualization of democracy was due to efforts of people like him, you know, not giving up on our system, fighting the military government to a standstill, and quite a number of them that are still around, and many that we have lost. So there are quite a number of things that it's the same thing. If you ask someone in the PDP, oh, your candidate is 70, don't you feel somehow about it? They will also, you know, reel out his achievements and why they believe he's qualified to occupy that position. And one thing I think we really need to understand as young people is the fact that when we talk about generational change, when we talk about young people's inclusion, we're not advocating for the exclusion of older people. The Constitution is quite clear on who is qualified to lead or who is qualified to occupy certain positions. And as long as you meet those requirements and you surpass the cutoff age, then you're qualified to run. Ultimately, it is the people, the voters, who will decide which of the candidates appeals best to them and who they would like to vote for. That said, we have a number of young people currently in the National Assembly. A lot of young people emerged, and then looking at the people on the ticket now who won primaries, many of them are also quite young. So the fact that we don't have someone in their 40s or 50s as our presidential candidate does not mean that we don't have young people running for other offices within the party. And again, it's the same thing as saying that if the president wins, inshallah, if we win, if the APC retains the presidency, there are also going to be a lot of young people involved in government then who will be appointed into different positions. I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of young people appointed at state level. It's the same thing. You find young people working everywhere. What we're trying to do now is ensure that young people are included in adequate numbers so that even if it does not truly reflect our population, it is better than the level of representation that we have now. So we should be very mindful of the fact that when we push for inclusion for our generation, we're not discriminating against the older generation. This is actually the wiser position to have, because look at the Senate, for instance. It's mostly filled with older people. You're more likely to find young or relatively young people in the House of Reps. But to get any kind of legislation to pass that will favor young people, you need both the House of Reps and the Senate to sign off on it. And then you need it to go to the state assembly where they will sign off on it. A lot of people in state assemblies in my constituency, our candidate is 61 years old. So a lot of people in state assemblies who also will have to sign off on constitutional amendment bills that would probably favor young people are also quite elderly. So we have to be careful in our advocacy and in our campaign. So it doesn't seem like we are opposing the older generation. As much as possible, we should give the impression that we're willing to work together while we also push for increased representation of young people. I believe that's how we've been able to get landmark legislation like the Not Too Young to Run to pass. That's how we've been able to get concessions on the cost of nomination forms. That's how we've been able to get more young people to actually emerge as candidates in political parties.
Wow, thank you. Okay, I think another question quickly. Kola Mosaid, it's showing that youth are taking our place in political space now. How can we avoid negative influences by the current players within the parties?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Okay, I think maybe there's a mistake, but his question is, with the influx of young people in politics currently, how can young people avoid negative influences by the current players within the party?
So the same challenges you face in politics, you face in every other career. I've worked in banking. I know that there are crazy people in the bank too. I'm sorry. I've worked in quite a number of places really. So I know that, as I said earlier, people tend to give this impression of politics like everybody there is rotten and you're going to be having breakfast with the devil himself every morning. It's really not that bad. There is no sector, there is no field, there is no career line, there's no career path but you don't meet funny people. So I think it's essentially up to every one of us to always remember why it is that we're joining politics. And I will not be dishonest or anything. A lot of young people also join politics for the wrong reasons. A lot of people join politics for the wrong reasons, and that includes young people too. But if you know your heart is in the right place, you're really trying to, like, lift your country out of the issues and the challenges that we face. You're trying to do better by your people, deliver on dividends of democracy, as we like to say. Then always keep at the back of your mind the reason why you have joined politics. And when that time comes, when you see something you don't like, or you feel like you have to compromise on something, let the reason you joined be what drives your decisions. Let that be what determines the decisions that you make. So ultimately, it's up to each and every one of us to determine what it is that we want to do, why we're joining, what it is that we want to do, what we're willing to compromise on, what we're not willing to compromise on, and how we want to manage the challenges that we face while pursuing a political career.
Wow. Thank you for all these amazing answers. Okay, the last question in the chat here. My question is, where does the money for the forms these people buy, where does the money go to? And the second question by the same person is, what does it take for someone to form a new party?
So money for the forms, the party has accounts. The national party will have accounts where the money will be paid into. And then often at state level, say you want to run for state assembly. Okay, so let me explain. If you're running for a party office, like when I ran for youth leader, the collection is central. So you have to get your forms at the head office in Abuja, and then you pay to the party's account there also. Now, if you're running for mainstream electoral office, like governor, president, you also pay to the party's account, but some forms can be picked up at state level. It depends on how the party has structured form collection. So if they say you can pick up assembly form or governorship form or something at state level, then you can do that, depending on what the party is saying. But usually assembly forms can be picked up at state level. All the others will be picked up in Abuja, but they pay for everything in one central account for the national body. Then at state level, you might now be charged a levy before you before you submit your form. Say you're going for state assembly and you're picking up your form at state level there, or you're submitting to the state. Usually you're expected to pay, you might be told to pay a certain amount of money to the account of the party in that state. When you're buying the form, you're paying into the account of the national party. But if you're submitting the form, the state chapter could also decide that, okay, they also need funds, so you might be levied, because that happens sometimes. What does it take to form a new party? So politics is a game of numbers, right? And you need numbers, basically. INEC has a list of requirements that I would encourage you to check out. I've never actually looked this up because I've never needed to form one, but INEC has a list of requirements. I know you need a head office, you need members, at least you need to show national spread. I'm not sure what the other, and then I think there's some guidelines also regarding the name and the logo and personnel and all of that. So you need to, and then funding and stuff. So you need to look up those requirements. But the most important thing would be to build a structure. Now, young people often ask me, why don't we just form our own party? Why are we still with these older people? And a point was made earlier about the exuberance of youth and the experience and wisdom of old age. And it's not impossible to build a structure. You can. Our leaders whom we look up to today also built theirs. But I'll use Asiwaju as an example. He first won an election as senator in '93. He won an election as senator. That was truncated. Then he came back, ran for governor. AD went on to form Action Congress, then Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, Action Congress of Nigeria. Then they merged and formed APC. This is a journey that has taken about 3 decades. So it's just for us to appreciate the amount of time and effort that goes into doing these things. Building a formidable structure is something that takes a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. So you have to cultivate a following. You have to identify people who have the same vision as you do, people who can be with you on that journey. people that you can trust, because trust is very key if you're trying to do something that ambitious. And you have to be willing to, you have to come up with messages that will resonate with the people. It's not something that's very easy to do, but it's not something that can't be done. But for the basic actual requirements on paper, I would encourage you to check the INEC website. I know they will have all the details there.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think I have my own question I want to ask, and I think the class will also learn from the question. And the question is basically based on the experiences that young people have in political parties. There is an institution that already exists in some of these parties, maybe managing stakeholders. Like there's this thing that you have to find favor within the stakeholders before you can emerge, maybe in flying your ticket and all the rest of that. What do you think that young people should do, to get those kind of, maybe to get to the level where you have key people in your party that will want to say, is this turn? Basically this turn thing is this turn. Because sometimes you also see that.
I didn't get that. Could you come again, please?
All right. Okay, my question, it's simple. There are institutions in political parties, like the stakeholders that are in charge of everything that is happening in political parties. They are also responsible largely to the emergence of candidates to fly the tickets of the party. Yeah. So how do you penetrate into those people? Sometimes, let me use for instance, you can meet some of them in consulting and they will be like they are with you. But at the end of the day, you find out that someone that told you he's with another person, even though you've consulted with money and all the rest of that. So what do you think that young people should do in that regard? And how do you handle those kind of challenges?
Okay, so I will use a line that I think all of us can relate to, and is that anybody can eat breakfast at any given time for any reason or no reason at all. So once you have that at the back of your mind, you should know that disappointments are part and parcel of politics. That's key. And so politics, right? You deal with all kinds of people. It's a field, it's an all-comers affair. So you'll meet the ones who are honest, and then you'll meet the ones who are not. And a major challenge with grassroots politics, especially, is that you'll find that for people who do politics entirely as their work at that level, they pretty much welcome everybody. But another thing, again, is that loyalty is also very key to a good number of politicians. So some of them are also very direct and very honest. And they will tell you, this thing you want, so you're good for it, you're qualified for it, but somebody came to me earlier. And I've already given them my word. I'm not going to tell you not to go ahead, but well, if you can maybe push from the top and secure this, that would be good. But if you're pushing locally, they might be a bit tough. Or they say, have you spoken to the governor? That's for those who are loyal to the governor and do what the governor asks them. Do you understand? And then some will be like, you have my support. Meanwhile, you don't. You really, really don't have their support. So you're going to meet a different mix of people, and then it's up to you to now decide how best to relate with them. And usually, I would also advise that you work at building a relationship before you need the relationship. And you also work at building a relationship, not just with these individuals, but with the party itself, so that when the time comes, say you want to run in 2027, and then you get up January of 2027, when you get up March of 2027, when you have primaries in May, and then you can't point to anything you've done within the party structure. You haven't been an active member, you haven't supported the party, you haven't done anything really within the party, and then you're saying, I want to run for governor, or I want to run for House of Reps, and you don't have relationships with key people within the party. I think you don't need to be told that you're wasting your time. And even if you spend all the money in the world, it's very unlikely that they're going to cast out people they've known and that they build relationships with over time for you simply because you're throwing money around. So it's also very important that young people, because another thing is, yes, finance is a challenge, but there are times we also feel like money is everything. It's not. And building a relationship with those stakeholders is key. So make sure that you get to them before you need them. And that doesn't even really guarantee anything, It doesn't guarantee you'll win, but in the event that you don't, the parties also have compensation process, right? And then it's usually people putting in a word for you and saying, try. This person has tried. So, he or she should also get something because they put in a lot of work over time. They've really contributed. They've always been there for different members of a party. Or when we wanted to open an office, he gave us his building. Or when we needed a boss, he contributed money. When the chairman's daughter was sick, he flew her abroad if you can afford that. When so and so needed a job, he did empowerment programs for our youth. It's easier when you've built a relationship with the party over time, and party people can speak about things that you've done and contributions you've made, so that even when you're vying for office and you don't get it, they can make a case for you when they're trying to think of, okay, who do we compensate? We have some campaign positions open. We have appointed positions open. We're sending some people to Abuja after the next election to take up spots in federal parastatal. So it's also a way to ensure that your name is in the conversation in the rooms that matter, even if maybe you want to run for reps or assembly or senate and you don't win your primary. So, always build relationships and always try your best. And there are times when you will actually have support of a lot of people and still not get what you want. So that's also very important. So make sure that, one, you're not just, because if they see you as a money bag, they will collect. So they will collect, but they will not, that support is just going to end there when you stand up. So yes, spend. Yes, don't be miserly. Spend with sense. And don't be miserly, but also actually work at the human relations ends of things and build a relationship so that they're more inclined to actually be loyal to you as opposed to just seeing you as Father Christmas that shares money.
Wow, thank you so much. That's very amazing, and thank you. You are so amazing and inspiring. The last question you have, Joseph, you're asking another question. That's the last question, and we'll call it a day. Joseph, you can go ahead now, unmute yourself and ask a question.
Okay, thank you. Good evening again. She actually answered part of my question that I wanted to ask, but I really want her to hit it very well. I really want to come from the angle of how do you separate where someone is competent but doesn't have the money to fund, and people who have the money to fund and are not competent? Because I'm very sure we see them a lot in these political parties where the party need the money to run the affairs from the candidates, as it were. And then you have people who are competent within the party that are supposed to get those positions, but they can't get that position because they do not have the money. So I really want to...
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a good one. As you mentioned, we touched on it briefly earlier. So if, for instance, you're qualified for something you want to run for, but finance is not really a strong point of yours, begin to work on it, right? Build a network. One reason why when senior politicians run, even though we know they have money, you find a lot of people, private sector, people especially, willing to support them, even if it's not public knowledge that they're funding them. And it's because they built relationships with these people over time. And these people actually believe, okay, I can invest in this candidate and it will not be a waste, right? So we also, as young people, need to build the kind of profile and the kind of network that will have people who are willing to invest in us when the time comes and we want to run for office. Now, in the meantime, if you know what the issues are, it's also important that you devise a way to put yourself out there. Because if you're participating, you're not really... so self-promotion, okay, again, I keep saying this, there are different kinds of people in politics, right? There are some people so obsessed with self-promotion that it gets to a point, you're like, what exactly is this person saying? Promote yourself in a way that, say you write articles and your government is in, or your party is in government in your state, and they have good initiatives being put up. You can write articles about this thing and put them out. Promote yourself in a sensible way that adds value, not in a way that annoys people. There are some people that once we see them on social media, we get angry, we don't want to hear anything they want to say. So work on the self-promotion and work on building a good network and work on really just putting your work and yourself out there so that, you know, you're being qualified for that position is not in doubt. And then you can also get people who are willing to support you when you stand up to vie for that seat. And then again, as I said earlier, within party systems, right, contrary to what a lot of people think, there is no shortage of smart people within the political system. Look at someone like Fashola, who became governor of Lagos in 2007, and now he's minister. Like he's one professional in politics that a lot of people talk about, and a lot of us young people look up to. And he's not the only one. There are many others like him. We have lawyers. The governor of Ondo State is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Governor Fayemi, you know, core pro-democracy activists. We have people who had look at Soludo in Anambra. He was CBN governor. So like I'm saying this so that we know that there is no shortage of qualified people within the political system. The guy who has money he might push the money angle more, but doesn't necessarily mean that he's not qualified for what he's seeking also. So it's also very key that in as much as we do our best to position properly, to promote our work, and to get the kind of support that we need, we should also keep it at the back of our mind that when we vie for these things and we don't get them, we've put in so much work that alternatives open up, okay? So like if you've done your homework within the party, you've done your bit to add value to your party, you've added value to the system, you've done the little that you can within your capacity, and people recognize your work and your value and your input, it is inevitable. It may not happen initially, it may not happen immediately, but inevitably something will come to you. So it's also very key that we play the long game. If you vie for something, there's this current minister now, Honorable Mamora. You know, he was supposed to get a couple appointments before. People were, you know, really holding their breath, waiting for when it would happen. And then this second term, he's been appointed as minister and he's still there. So sometimes you not being recognized on time doesn't mean that you don't have capacity, doesn't mean you're not valued. It could just be like the right thing hasn't come yet. You know how the so like a lot of us are religious anyway, we're all Nigerians. So like in my own faith, we believe that everything happens at the ordained time, right? And I think the Bible also says that there's a time and season for everything or something like that. Apologies if I didn't quote that correctly. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you could put in a lot of work and then the recognition might not come immediately, but that doesn't mean that it's never going to come. So don't stop working. And the fact that someone has gotten something ahead of you doesn't mean that they're not qualified to have it or they only got it because of money. At the end of the day, right, some people will vie for elective office and never really get it. But then they get in a position like an appointed position and they set a kind of record that even those that have had elected positions cannot beat. People will get elected, they'll be forgotten. But look at Dora Akunyili of blessed memory. She was never elected in any office. She was appointed, right? And we still remember Dora today as an iron woman, as a competent woman that she was. So sometimes, you know, you might want something, it may not click. Doesn't mean that other opportunities will not open up. And it doesn't mean that you should stop putting in the work. So I would just advise you again to sum it all up. Do your networking well, promote yourself properly, position yourself properly, do everything you can within the party system, have a kind of network that can actually generate funding for your politics when you need it. But then if it still does not work out, continue working, ensure that your efforts are recognized and something will come eventually. You just have to be patient.
Thank you. And please, I really want you to comment on this fact. I'm very sure that most youths consider the older generation to be slow in changing the situation of youth. Like they are not really in touch with what is really happening to the younger generation. And then the younger generation cannot get to the position of radical change because they are not occupying those positions. Please, I just wanted to make a little comment about that. Thank you.
Okay, so we've been doing a lot of advocacy. You know, I mentioned earlier that there are certain challenges we've always been grappling with. With time and consistent advocacy, we're beginning to find ways around them. Like the high cost of forms, we have concessions now for young people, for women, for people with disabilities. Within the party, we have a lot of young people actually in appointed positions, state level, federal level, in the National Assembly, you know, the different arms of government, the executive, the legislature. And it's a gradual process, right? And part of what we're doing now, like this program trying to get more young people to be politically literate, and other efforts by other young people, both within politics or civil society and in entertainment, towards the same aim, are beginning to yield fruit. So like it is up to us to not stop the advocacy. Take the National Assembly, for instance, not too young to run past in the 8th Assembly, but that was not the first time. It was before Parliament. Before then, during Tambuwal's assembly, the same bill seeking to reduce the age of eligibility was struck out. And take another example, the Violence Against Persons Bill. I think it was considered for about 14 years before they eventually passed it. So that's just for us to understand that it is with sustained advocacy that we'll be able to get to the kind of things that we need, especially considering what our country is like. So we have to sustain the advocacy. Look at the Electoral Act also. There was a lot of advocacy that went into this new Electoral Act being signed into law. So, as young people, we have a number of young people in key positions already, but we need more of them. So we just have to sustain that advocacy. And then also at state level, because I've found that a lot of us focus on the national level without really paying so much attention to what's happening in our respective states. And that's another issue. So it's very clear. Politicians actually, they respect young people. They understand that we have the powers. But it's key that we also engage meaningfully through that election process and that we're very active so that when they win, they know that truly they owed their election to these young people. Because it's not a good thing when we're seeing updates on election day and it's mostly old people at the polling units. It's easy for us to say young people have over half of the voter register. But when young people are not actually coming out to vote, that also affects how our advocacy is received. So like if people actually know that, okay, youth have block votes, they're using their numerical strength to their advantage when it comes to elections, they're going to take us a lot more seriously. And I think we really need to work on that also as a group.
Wow, thank you so much. There are no truer words to this. I don't know. There is one more hand that's up. I don't know if you want to take that last question. Yeah. Hello. So there is one more question that okay, Latasha.
Hello.
Yeah, Latasha,
Yes.
you can just ask the question just immediately, please. Just very
okay. I typed it. I already typed it in the group. I thought it would be. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I typed it in the group. I thought she would just address it there, but I'll read it from the group.
Is it on my end or yours?
I think everyone can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Maybe it's from your end. Hello, can you hear us now?
I think she's having some challenges with the internet.
Yeah, she's having network issues.
Hello, Miss Abiola.
Hello, Miss Ronsula. Can you hear us now?
I cannot hear the moderator.
Okay, but can you hear us now? I think it's from your end because I can hear Latasha clearly.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
Okay, Latasha, yeah, you can go ahead and ask. She can hear us now.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to read from the group. I said, it's interesting to me how social media, oh, she's left already. I can see that she's left.
Oh, okay, yeah, she's left.
I think we lost her, the network.
Okay. Yeah, we lost her. Okay, guys, so we had an interesting class. Okay, and I believe you already taking notes and you're already taking action steps to what you are going to do, especially most of you that have okay, Wumi, you can unmute yourself now. Sorry. Lisa, you want to say something? Your hand is
Oh,
up.
okay, yeah. I chatted her that she should leave and rejoin, so I'm sure she's going to join back right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, she has joined back.
Oh, okay, awesome. Please make me co-host, Godson. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, hello, Mr. Rinsola. Can you hear us? Let me make a co-host.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, I think it was my network.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Let me read what I said in the group. I said, it's also interesting to me how social media as a tool has been utilized and wielded better by older politicians than even we young people who are supposed to be more adept at it. So, for example, Buhari's message and slogan of change in 2015 and the current obedient energy. Do young politicians not see and understand then the power that social media can have in an election period? Because it's funny, again, that it's the older established ones who we say we don't want that we still rally behind on social media. I am yet to see any young politician that has been able to storm and use social media as a tool for change or at least disruption in a way that the older, more experienced politicians still use it. What does that say about young people who say that they want young politicians in rotation?
I think so with social media generally, social media tends to amplify what is going on ground. And that's why I think that because the older guys have established structures, they are more likely to have dedicated followers online, as opposed to young people who maybe are running on platforms that are not really strong. I don't have a lot of people backing them. And that's why you will still find, as you said, that it's older politicians dominating the social media space, even though it's primarily a space for much younger people. So the fact that older politicians are more prominent locally when on ground at the grassroots, it reflects in saying how often they're talked about by people online, and the amount of dedicated followers and supporters that they have on these platforms also. So I think that might actually be the reason. And another challenge that I think some young people also have is that you find young or relatively young politicians making reference to social media when they're asking about their political prowess. And I think it's that also kind of gives people a distorted view of their strength, like their actual strength. Because I don't understand why people would cite number of followers when talking about elections or support. And this isn't like necessarily directed at anyone, but it's something I've noticed politicians do over a period of time, especially since 2019. So I think it's also key that the same way the numerical strength that the older politicians have at the grassroots reflects in how much support they get online, younger politicians should also try and put in the work to actually build something on ground, as opposed to just wanting to amplify on social media when they don't really have so much going on where it really matters and where votes will be cast.
All right. Thank you. Latasha, I think that answered your question now. Okay, but I think we don't have another question. And maybe I would just want to do a final remark and maybe to target it in the direction that what do you really have to say as a final word to the class, to people especially that have interest in politics, following that there's a reality in politics that is opposed to the assumptions we have outside. This is in the always talk. It's when you get in there that you know what's happening. So what is your advice generally? Like, what do you have to tell all the young people that maybe have interest to run office? So,
okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is don't let anything you've heard scare you. And politics is not any more difficult than banking or medicine or tech or entertainment or any other career field that people work in like normally. So it's filled with people, right? It's the same people you deal with everywhere. And whatever character issues you're going to be dealing with and the people you encounter in politics, are the same issues you're going to have in every other field. Because at the end of the day, right, a political party is like a microcosm of society. And governance at the end of the day is like, a small mirror of the society. So don't let anything you hear or what you're told scare you off political participation. Then I would also want to stress the importance of adding value. And then build a network. I'm going to give you advice that I should probably also follow. So I'm very introverted. I don't like going out. I'm always, if I'm not at home, the only thing that could take me out of my house is maybe work. If somebody's owing me money, or if I need to attend like a meeting at the party office, or politics, work, and chasing my money. These are the only things that get me out of my house. Now, if you're going to do politics, this is not a good attitude to have. So I encourage you to be very social. You have to build networks. You have to mingle with people. Don't just stay in your house. It's not a good thing. Because it's a field that entails a lot of human interactions. So you have to do the human relations as best as you can. So you could be an introvert, but try to be extroverted in times that you need to be. Try to build relationships. Try to build friendships. Try to build a network. It really, really, really helps with politics. Then, yes, also attend events, especially if you're from the Southwest and we like to party. A lot of political things happen at those events. So, as much as possible, try to attend all these things. If you're invited or follow somebody who's invited, but try to be present at, key places where you can also build your network. Then add value. And to add value, you also project something that you have. Everybody has something. I do media for a living, media and public relations. So I think that's how I'm able to cope with being such an introvert. I'm able to project my ideas based on the professional edge that I have. And once in a while, I could show up talking about party initiatives. I could write an article, to just promote something positive for the party. And that's what I've really leaned into because, well, it comes naturally to me. So I would also encourage you, identify a skill that you have or something that you have. If it's money, please use it. I don't have money. So if it's money that you have, use that also for the party. So try to identify something you have with which you can add value to your party system. And also try to support others as much as you can, as long as you can. Be there, build a network, and generally, right, the same things that you would have to do, the same attitudes you would have to imbibe to grow in any career field are pretty much the same attitudes you have to imbibe for politics. And older people, especially for those of us who are young, because I've been quite hot-headed too before. I'm a much calmer person now. But I would just advise that, we view older people not as opponents trying to block our progress in politics, but as allies, that could also help us grow with their own wealth of experience and all that they know. It's a well of knowledge that you want to tap from. So as much as possible, it's also very key, the kind of attitudes and the kind of disposition that we have towards older politicians, because whether or not we like it, they still pretty much call the shots. So, you have to be very wise, essentially, to be able to relate properly with them and to also learn from them. And as much as possible, seek to improve yourself. I should actually commend everybody who's here, because it's not everyone that realizes that there is a gap in what they're interested in and what they know, and that they need to fill that gap and then to stay on long enough to really reap the rewards from that process. It shows a level of commitment that I believe I need to commend everyone here for. I also did a lot of trainings when I was starting out, even though we didn't have anything virtual at the time. It was mostly INEC trainings. I learned how to be a party agent. I learned how to function in different capacities within the party. I've worked as an aide to our women leader, then the very first women leader we had. I've been PRO of the Youth Forum. I've been acting president of the Young Women Forum. I've been secretary of the Young Women Forum. I've done quite a bit. You just have to keep learning and to try to make yourself better. And there's a saying about iron sharpening iron. So even within your party, you should identify other young people or other like minds, not necessarily young people, who share your commitment, who share your passion, that you can develop each other. The intellectual development that you'll have from exchanging ideas, from really debating ideas. Say, for instance, I'm not a socialist. I'm more of a welfare capitalist, but like I understand that there is a key need for that the business community and stuff. I have friends who are very socialist in their views, and then debate helps you to reform your ideas. So okay, so this is what I think, this is what is best for the country right now. This might not really work out. By the time you have this network of really bright people around you, it would also help you to reform your own ideas and become brighter. So at every avenue, seek for ways to add value. Put yourself out there as much as you can, as much as your personality would allow you to. And then if you have personal flaws, like the way I am, I'm introverted to the point of it being a problem. So if you understand that about yourself, also look at the flaws that you have and how you need to work on them so that you can excel at the political fields that you've chosen. And as much as possible, another thing I will say is, if you're active, especially locally, there are some kind of requests you might get occasionally that might really rub you the wrong way. But again, politics is a field that is very heavy on human relations. You have to know how to deal with people and you have to be patient. And always, always, always keep it at the back of your mind that you're playing the long game. So it's not about now, it's about 10, 20, 30 years from now, and how much we'll all have been able to achieve within the system for the benefit of our people and for the benefit of our country.
My dear sister Rinsola, thank you very much for, of course, another very, very great lecture. I always jump in on your lectures, so I have those favorites. I have those favorites, and anytime my sister is talking, I seem to want to remind myself that these are the basic rules. So Kule, do not forget or get lost within, the prism. There's this thing that happens when you've done a few things in politics. You start to say, okay, man, I've arrived now, I've landed, and inactivity in politics can, of course, get you kicked out in a very, very short time. Your time will pass and the fame will pass. So Rinsola, of course, on behalf of the board of the Electoral College, the working arm, which is the region, and students of the 8th cohort, thank you very, very much. And we'll be inviting you to their graduation, which should be sometime end of this month. And it's unbelievable what you do, and I'm very proud of you. And then to also think that someone who is female is really pushing the bars on parameters of governance is highly, highly impressive. Please, when you're running for president, please hope you give me the
I hear you.
Look, we are booking now. Let's just book now. Thank you very much, Rinsola. And I'm sure from the 8th cohort, I'll allow them unmute their mics and say thank you to you, and then we can close the class. Thank you very much, Rinsola.
Okay, guys, you can unmute your mic and say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very well, but as an APC member, we still like